Hello there, my name is Rex Nebula, and today we will be taking a look at this large document titled Niji is in Trouble. This giant document contains a list of every possible Nijisanji drama in existence. I know the document uses present tense, but these are things that have happened in the past. There aren't really any groundbreaking stuff here. It's just compilation of everything that has happened. I took a look through the outline and I could see towards the final parts of the document, we could see a lot of controversies that played out in public, especially in the EN space. What's interesting about this document is that it contains most of the controversies that Nijisanji is involved in. It also includes a lot of controversies in Japan that are slowly coming to light. This is a long document, so feel free to take breaks in between. Here we go. Necessary disclaimer: everything written down on this document is what I believe is factual. There are many sources and references throughout the document, and to the best of my knowledge, they are accurate and true. However, do read this document with a healthy dose of skepticism. It is still a whip, and entire sections may be changed with newly uncovered information. TLDR is on the bottom. All known Nijisanji controversies are also toward the end, including Korean, Japan, and EN. Read headings if you want to jump to a specific section. Financial issues: a severe lack of spending from Nijisanji. In December 2023/January 2024, Niji bought back 2.5 billion yen worth of stock to artificially inflate their stock price. Stock buyback. This comes out to around $18 million, about the cost of Hololife's 3D studio. What do stock buybacks and such have anything to do with the company? The answer may surprise you. Hololive is Nijisanji's main competitor. And on top of investing in the company by building the biggest 3D mocap studio in Japan, which finished last year, they outspent Niji over 6-1 in terms of funding per talent, management, and salary. $86,000 to $14,000 in the upper estimate. Keep in mind that Niji has almost twice the number of talents. See the problem already? Note, this is not the payout to talents, this is the amount of money each company has invested in their respective talents through management and salary. Hololive members get a base salary if their earnings are low. Nijisanji livers don't. This is also the highest estimate for Nijisanji, and most likely wrong, since other expenses are not covered as mentioned below. Hololive's end-of-year report stated approximately 6 billion yen for SG&A, selling, general, and administrative costs. On the flip side, Anycolor spent 2.2 billion yen for SG&A costs in the same fiscal year. According to Hololife's own graphs and data, approximately a third of that 6 billion yen operating expense was used for personnel expenses, salaries of staff and management. This places its approximate spending at 2 billion yen, about 15 million in 2023. About 50% of employees are directly related to management and such, 7.5 million. Subtracting all of Niji's selling and general expenses from that 2.2 billion yen total comes out to 300 million yen for administrative expenses, or a grand total of $2.5 million spent on administrative expenses. 2.5 million divided between 180 talents for administrative expenses is a pitiful $14,000 per year per talent for management. Yet Cover still spent $7.5 million specifically on management on their 87 talents, meaning $86,000 per talent for management. And keep in mind, this is if all the administrative expenses are spent on just management. Administrative expenses has also lawyer fees, insurance, rent, and supplies, utilities. Cover's data specifically mentions that their spending is on personnel expenses for the numbers mentioned above, 15 million, and I deducted the non-management portions, $7.5 million. In that case, if we take out about half of the administrative expenses and claim the remaining is for management, that leaves us with a whopping $7,000 per year per talent. So about 7-to-1 ratio between talent and management if managers are paid average salaries. It's likely that not all personnel within Nijisanji are management, since Hololive has a dedicated team for Hollow Earth. It's likely that the percentage of management among staff is high within Nijisanji. Even so, with a generous estimate of 2/3 of staff being management, the numbers still look daunting. Assuming $14,000 per year per talent for Nijisanji is true, and assuming that the talent managers get paid about average salary in Japan, $41,000, we are looking at a talent to management ratio of 4-to-1, the highest estimate. If we take the lowest estimate, about $4,600 per year per talent, considering the third of their staff isn't management, it comes out to 12-to-1, 12 talents for one manager in an entertainment company. A 6 times difference between Hololive and Nijisanji when it comes to spending on personnel. if operating under the higher estimates of Nijisanji personnel costs. Anycolor's balance sheet does not separate the expenses between JP and EN, nor do they give an exact number for personnel expenses. It may be possible, especially looking at Niji's recent job postings in Canada, the actual expenses for management in Niji Yen is worse than its JP counterpart. Undeniable financial proof of the difference in management. However, increased their personnel spending from 1.1 billion yen to 2 billion yen between 2022 and 2023. Meanwhile, Nijisanji only increased their SG&A spending from 1.8 billion to 2.2 billion. The percentage of cover staff being management did not change much between the year, meaning cover effectively doubled their management budget in a year's time, about 450 million yen, basically $3 million. Meanwhile, Nijisanji increased only by 400 million yen in total SG&A expenses, about 2.6 million yen. $2.6 million. Considering what I estimated above, remember SG&A covers a lot of areas including lawyer fees, it is possible there was less than 100 million yen. Basically, $660,000 increase in management fees despite Nijisanji debuting 13 new livers. 27 if counting the VTA graduates moving to Nijisanji. There were 9 new livers in the latter half of 2022 in just Niji Yen. TLDR, Nijisanji hired/promoted 27 new livers into Nijisanji yet only spent about 100 to 200 million, 200 million being the generous estimate yen, for new management to compensate. All Life spent about 450 million yen for half the amount of talents entering the company. Even if we only count the totally new livers, that's still 13 versus 14, and we're also counting Whole Life's new gen management, being hired several months prior to their debut. 100 to 200 million yen versus 450 million yen. More financial comparisons between Whole Life and Nijisanji. Net sales are up 80%, yet operating profits are up 125%. There's a severe imbalance of actually reinvesting into the company and spending money for their own talents, just by the numbers alone. Profits grew from 14 billion yen to 25 billion yen, but operating costs only went up from 10 billion yen to 16 billion yen. This is despite the sharp increase of JP and EN livers in the same period in 2022 and 2023. On top of this, Nijisanji only spent $500,000 on new equipment, machinery, buildings, and vehicles in 2023. For a tech company, this is surprisingly no. In comparison, Whole Life spent $13 million in the same area for the year 2023, compared to Cover, which increased its revenue from 13.7 billion yen to 20.5 billion yen. On the flip side, their operating costs went from 11.8 billion to 17 billion, basically keeping a consistent percentage of operating costs even with the revenue increase. Also, to note, just a physical difference between the two companies that fans can easily see: merchandise, the bread and butter revenue source for any VTuber company. If you are not aware, Nijisanji only gives talents about 1 to 2% of their merch sales, as referenced by Mr. in the past. Whole Life gives 50%, as mentioned by Coco in response Mr.'s comments about the 2% to the talents. This allows the talents to select the type of merch they want. These have included anything from Coco's famous butt plug plushie, sake, shot glasses, entire tables, giant plushies, and most recently, Ame's milk carton, and a full illustration rubber mat with a poncho blanket, and offer a chance for them to invest in the merch for bigger splits and more promotions for better sales. They do still need to pay for half of the merch cost, but have an opportunity to make them more individualized and better selling merch. You can just see the difference in the type of merch the companies produce, and it's clear which one is spending more on the talents and on the actual goods themselves. This is why, despite the sheer number of livers that Nijisanji has, 180 livers versus 87 Whole Life talents, revenue and gross profits are pretty close in comparison. Revenue was 20.45 billion yen for Whole Life in 2023, 25 billion for Nijisanji. Gross profit is 9.4 billion yen for Whole Life and 11.6 billion for Nijisanji. That is not to say that Whole Life is free from their own controversies and problems, but overall the situation was handled professionally and Cover didn't slander the talents as they left. Spending issues, except when it comes to manipulating the company's value. Nijisanji is sitting on a big pile of cash, supposedly. Early 2023 had them at approximately $82 million. Whole Life has similar numbers, and Color does have an edge in income and net profit especially, since they cut costs as much as they do, so why can't they hire management and such? I mean, there has to be a reason why they are looking for part-time bilingual translators for the EN branch while offering only $8, basically 1100 yen per hour, right? The buyback. It's certain that they spent a good portion of their liquid assets on the buyback to appease the shareholders, about a sixth of their total supposed liquid assets. They still have a good amount of money, over $60 million if numbers are to be believed. But it's clear that for the past several years, they don't like spending money unless it's inflating the company's value. Buybacks are usually what large established companies carry out, since they have enough money to carry out such an action. Buybacks pump the price of the stock, but it's usually not long-term. Buying more leads to higher demand, leads to higher price. A company that is hedging its bet on rapid future growth usually invests the funds they have to expand more, or at least the traditional theory goes. This recent controversy, Zion's termination, has crashed their stock prices into the gutter. Pre-buyback, any color stock was hovering around 3150 Japanese yen. After the buyback was completed in early January, it shot up to 3800 Japanese yen. Now it has crashed and is barely staying above 3000 yen. A psychological line that will lead to mass sell-offs if they cross the threshold at 30-40 yen. Why 3000 yen? Because that was the lowest point for a year pre-buyback. And if it goes under 3000, it means bigger shareholders that were keeping the stock price alive have given up. There is some evidence to support that this may happen when Japanese stock market reopens next Monday, as the stock crashed from 3180 at open to 3040 by close on Thursday alone. This is the lowest price in half a year, even lower than before the buyback. This is devastating financially. The company just blew $18 million into nothingness with Jack to show for it, and the stock is even lower than before. Even worse, they can no longer buy back stocks, as they'll be unlisted if they do so they can't pump their stock price anymore. And now they're stuck with whatever controversy hits their stock price. And since the price is now lower than pre-buyback, it means they lost money from that $18 million in buybacks, as the stock price they bought at is higher than the current price. Funnily enough, the Japanese stock exchange just hit their highest values that same day. Meanwhile, any color stock reached its lowest in half a year. It's like you buy up a bunch of items in MapleStory betting on the item's price inflating so you can sell high. But the price crashes, you lose money from the purchase, and nobody wants to buy your items. So while their main competitor is showing tangible results with a brand new studio and upcoming VR platform and even more events, Nijisanji spent all that money that Holo spent on a buyback that failed. Even worse, remember that Niji also carried out a stock split last year. So while Niji has pulled off every trick in the book to artificially take their stock price, except the dividend, the end result is a stock that has barely risen since last year. The year-over-year stock price change as of February 26 is Cover at an 83% increase, while Anycolor had a 40% increase. Basically, Cover stock price has actually increased more steadily than Anycolor's, even though Cover hasn't done much to artificially inflate its value. This is not to mention that Nijisanji's IR statement last year mentioned how Niji yen would be the pillar of their business. Currently, Japan's economy is in a recession, and the yen is extremely weak. Not only that, but the JP market for VTubers is oversaturated. Nijisanji needs to show solid future growth potential to appease its investors, but with this recent controversy, it's looking extremely unlikely. Overseas branches controversies and Nijisanji's cover-up. Here's some information about their other branches. This is not the first time the company has blown up its overseas expansion routes. This is pretty on par with Nijisanji. This is the fourth branch they've blown up in the last 2 years. Nijisanji India branch was a mess from the beginning. They had no proper support, and the company tried to rebrand them as EN right before Hololive debuted Myth, Hololife's first EN gen. They immediately terminated the entire branch after that fumble. Niji ID Indonesia was shot because the parent company pulled out any and all support for no discernible reason, as Niji ID was doing fine and Holo ID was even thriving. Niji ID had a good management, arguably one of the best managed branch, even including JP. The staff didn't shy away from appearing on stream, and they even created the Dakimakura out of the chief staff member. Nijisanji fired management to, you guessed it, cut costs. The entire branch was folded into JP, but most have either left or were terminated. And Niji KR Korea was why Elira's clique theory caught on in the first place, since Korea was run by a female VTuber with an actual clique that doxed the other talents. Her name was Ara, and she was a bully who slandered their entire branch. Pretty much everyone in Niji KR. Ara was suspended towards the end of Niji KR as a result of a lot of the controversies and conversations slandering Niji KR was leaked, and she was sued by Yuya, another Niji KR member. Good management would have suspended Ara while trying to confirm facts and firing her once confirmed. Instead, Korean management protected her and went after the forums that were exposing this info. The timing was incredibly on point. Yami tweeted out a message out of exasperation when this happened, and much of Niji KR took a lengthy break in January of 2022, right before the termination of the branch, likely in protest. It's not a coincidence that these two graduation announcements happened at the same time. This is not including one of the first people they hired in Korea who has an extensive background in being a bully. TLDR, she worked for another company and abandoned them when Niji moved into Korea, and she sabotaged her own genmates to get a leg up. Third liver, Moarin bullied people viciously, enough that it caused one of her high school classmates to end up in the hospital, which required surgery. It wasn't just bullying, it was straight up World War II Japanese-style torture. Ironic, according to the reports. The Illyria clique theory was a conspiracy theory that claims that one of the Niji EN talents took over management roles as they could speak Japanese, and management was either terminated or underpaid, hence constant reshuffling. As expected, the Korean branch folded quickly after that scandal. It's rumored that ID was also bundled into the fold since ID and KAR died at the same time, so it would look like Niji was centralizing rather than killing a branch due to their own incompetence. The female VTuber Ara involved got away scot-free, by the way, for reasons we can only speculate. If anything, Nijisanji buried her background as deeply as possible. The numbers, Mason. What do they mean? EN viewership / super chats. In 2023, Anna's CCV for concert was at 13,000. Her Zatsudan CCV was 5,000. In 2024, Anna's CCV for the concert was 7,000. Her Zatsudan CCV was 3,000. Now look at Anna's, one of their biggest female streamers, recent concert and birthday live. Just this week compared to last year, views and earnings are down by more than half, with most of the donors' viewers coming from Hong Kong, compared to last year, which was mostly the US. This is all public info that can be seen on YouTube analysis websites. 44% of the viewers and donations last year were from the US, while only 14% were from Hong Kong / China and Japan. Yet this year, it's the reverse. 24% from the US, 55% from Japan and China / HK. Total donations are down 50% as well. Anna is a great singer, and she's one of the biggest talents left in EN. She had a lot of fellow livers join her concert streams, yet her numbers are down massively. Just this year, Niji EN had 3 talents leave the company: Powu, Selen, and Kyo. Nijisanji CEO even stated that even if the talents leave, their fans would be redistributed among the other talents. Yet Pomu and Selen were their biggest female talents in EN, while Kyo had a sizable following as well. So why are the numbers way down with the almost evaporated support from EN nations like the US? This is a screenshot showing the CCVs of various talents, including Rosemi, Hex, and a few others. Why are Nijisanji livers, many of them talented in their own right, unable to hit 4-digit CCVs, except a select few, with an even steeper fall-off for later generations, and even worse, abysmal donations from the public, to the point where 2 members of their newest gen, TTT, earned a grand combined total of $8,000 in 4 months. In comparison, the lowest super chatted member of Holo EN's most recent gen, Advent, is Bibo, with $100,000 in 7 months. Heck, they didn't even do the bare minimum to promote their newest EN generation, TTT. Hardly any promotions on social media, and even any trailers / songs promotions on other Nijisanji channels. Hololive released Advent in the best ways possible. All their debut streams peaked at over 100,000 concurrent watching for the entire stream. Holo Advent was hyped up for a month in advance, teaser at the end of the first EN concert, Connect the World, radio science, to allow speculation and theories to form, allowing the hype to reach its peak, for making the new generation official. Not too long to prevent the hype from dying out too early. Channel released several days ahead of debut streams, heavily promoted everywhere, even in JP. A very solid trailer. More personalized teasers for each member. A great Gen song. Lots of covers and streams immediately right off the bat. And this barely costed anything. This was just good internal networking and spreading the news to all existing fans. The only costs involved here were for the trailers and the song. How was Niji unable to match this at all? To the point where even one of their top female EN streamers didn't even know about the new generation. Your guess is as good as mine. All known controversies / scandals, black company behavior here. The author had an aneurysm seeing how badly Niji's run. And as some people have pointed out, some of these links are Reddit threads or the such. However, said threads have much more context and outside sources to support all these allegations. It is difficult to pin concrete proof as much of the evidence for these events have either been scrubbed or buried, especially Korean's case. However, there are many witnesses that watched these controversies play out in real time, so they are not baseless speculation. Also, not every controversy is on here. If they are not explicitly mentioned, it's because I deemed that they were not due to Nijisanji itself, or I wanted to respect the PL identities of the livers involved. There are also rumors/speculations such as the ones surrounding Fianna, but much of them are baseless from what I could find. I do not support or condone any harassment or taunting of the livers, starting with Niji JP. The Shindo Raito rape scandal. Shindo Raito was hired by Nijisanji back in 2019 and still holds the record for the latest termination of any Niji liver. His background is extremely controversial and criminal. Basically, he had an extremely sketchy past in which he claimed that he drugged underage girls, JKs, and raped them. On top of this, he admitted in his PL accounts that he signed up/joined Nijisanji to drug and rape female livers and do a lot of stuff. Basically, a lot of off-collab events with them to achieve his goals. Niji caught on within a few days, but he allegedly doxed some of the livers and leaked confidential info before being terminated. By the way, all the information was on his public accounts, such as Twitter, before he joined. Why the hell did Nijisanji not check his background? And they seemingly committed the same mistake later on with KR, with Ara and Maorin. AN, I know this is not a new yab, but not all VTuber fans have been in the know since 2019 and 2020. Many fans are new. Providing this info gives us a point of reference for just how long Nijisanji has been doing these kinds of things. Moving on, we have Gundou Mirei's joke and graduation. Gundou Mirei was not an unproblematic talent. He had been warned numerous times before by management due to her saying insensitive and inappropriate things. Yet despite this, she was one of the earliest livers and had been in the company for several years by that point. Debuted in 2019 and terminated in 2023. So if she was problematic, why was she still there? The official reason for her graduation, possibly pressured to graduate by the company, was making a joke about baseball. The joke in question, Mirei commented on her ignorance of baseball rules while reacting to the World Baseball Classic. Among other jokes about how she does not know what a strike or home run are, she tweeted, if a strong person is standing there, can the person who pitches the ball chuck it at their head or body and make them lead the pitch that way? Now, it's fair that there were legitimate concerns that her comment, which sparked viral outrage within Japan, could lead to an end of Niji's collaboration with Koshien, their big yearly event along with Perms to stream Power Pros in conjunction with it. What is not okay is the company deciding to throw their liver under their bus. Basically, the company outed all their grievances with her to the public to soothe the public anger. Their statements made it clear that while it wasn't an outright termination, they were expecting her to leave, in addition to public pressure on this issue. She gave the company the middle finger on her way out, literally. The agency added that it had reprimanded the VTuber for inappropriate statements on numerous occasions in the past, and that she posted the tweet without heeding the warnings. The company is currently scrutinizing Gundou Mirei's publicly available content and vowed to ensure that its talents do not step out of bounds in the future. Mirei and another former liver, Meiji, also mentioned how working in Nijisanji was like a prison after their graduation/termination. Next, we have Mito's revolt against Nijisanji. This is a pretty significant one, as Tsukino Mito was the first Niji liver, similar to how Sora is Hololive's first. The fact that she took a stand along with a number of other livers against management and the company in 2018 and 2019 should be telling, even calling Nijisanji a black company. Due to incompetent management that had lowered the livers' morale significantly, many talents, including Mito, openly rebelled and demanded better conditions. It started off as a joke, but rolled into an actual union-like group that clamored for improvements to management and standards within the company as a whole. Some of the worst complaints from the list are the company making livers foot the bill for their own model without telling them beforehand, lack of management and support, Nijisanji pitting the livers against each other, creating a hostile workplace, and really bad quality toilet paper. This is a grave sin in my eyes. Anycolor back in 2018 was run badly with respect to its treatment of staff and talents. It was so bad even Tsukino Mito, the first Niji liver, was calling them out as a black company. Needless to say, with Niji members staging a revolt, dubbed the Nijisanji Resistance, they called out bad practices, albeit as parody, but the message was sent, and management made changes to improve conditions. We don't remember what they did explicitly, someone please reply, but the thing is, that was 2018 when the company was small and concerns were addressed towards its domestic main market, that being JP. Unfortunately, their efforts were in vain. As we see today, Nijisanji didn't change. They just covered everything up better. All those problems still exist within Nijisanji to this day, except the toilet paper one. I really hope they at least fix that. Now, we arrive at the Roa/Mirei accent controversy. Yuzuki Roa, a VTuber within Nijisanji, has been on hiatus for more than a year following a dispute in October of 2020 with fellow now ex-Nijisanji VTuber Inuyasaka Mirei, spurred by the latter's adapting a way of speaking very similar to Roa's, among other things. Behind the scenes, chats involving these two and management were leaked by gossip VTuber Narukami Sabaki, whose intervention stoked anger among some viewers with accusations of bullying, something that both Roa and Nijisanji's management company Anycolor, then Ichikara, have disputed. Mirei, identified as being behind the leaked info and having twice announced her retirement just to take it back, was let go by Ichikara/Anycolor due to difficulty establishing a relationship of trust and violation of her non-disclosure agreement in her contract. TLDR, Mirei, who was hired after Roa began to copy a bit of Roa's mannerisms during her streams. Roa asked her to stop imitating her, to which Mirei refused, claiming it was her natural accent. This led to a fight between the two, mostly on Mirei's end, and management failed to settle the issue. A critical issue in this controversy was the fact that the management didn't allow the two to actually communicate directly with each other, leading to a mess of miscommunication and accusations. The end result? Confidential info and Discord messages were leaked to an infamous Japanese Keemstar equivalent, Narukami Sabaki. Mirei was confirmed the leaker. She leaked this info to her friend, who leaked it to Sabaki, and tried to portray Roa as a bully, which led to an anti-campaign against her. Mirei tried to graduate twice, pulling back each time at the last moment, to create a public narrative that she was being bullied. Management let her get away with it the first time, but she was fired after the second time, after they discovered the NDA breach. Roa then brought on a lawsuit to stop the slander online after she was forced to go on a hiatus for a year due to the abuse she received, which leads to the conclusion that these were two livers going at each other, or in Roa's case, defending herself from the mobs and creating a media controversy in the process for a few weeks minimum. Meanwhile, Nijisanji tried to intervene, possibly worsen the situation due to miscommunication and error, as neither side could clarify their position to the other. This one was entirely preventable on Nijisanji's part, unlike Lulu's case where antis swarmed her due to pure hatred and even escalated to physical stalking, leading her to leave the company. Had they released any form of public statement or conducted an internal investigation swiftly, instead of being on the back foot and allowing slander against Roa to spread, despite her claims being verifiable, none of this would have occurred. Instead, they waited a full 2 months before actually terminating Mirei, officially letting her graduate herself with no chance of contract renewal, and participated in a he-say-she-say game between the two. By the time Mirei was terminated, the outrage campaign against Roa was already in full swing. Also, Mirei was lying about her accent. She was copying Roa to eat into her viewer base, proved by screenshots from her own texts. Next, we have a black eye from Keemstar. Nijisanji did try to sue Sabaki though, and lost spectacularly. Imagine that, a big billion-dollar corporation unable to prove that Sabaki was slandering their own talents, despite Japan's draconian slander laws. Basically, anyone can be sued for slander as long as their statements, even if they are true, damage the reputation or image of an individual or organization. When they had clear-cut evidence that he used a leaked information to start an anti-campaign against one of their talents. Now we reach the Axia harassment controversy. Axia Krone was a unique case that sounds familiar to some in the VTubing community. Due to his model and personality, he developed a very parasocial and out-of-control fanbase that infantilized him, harassing his every move and trying to control his actions, including who he collabed with. When he fought back, he was swarmed with antis for months. It reached a breaking point where his mods were overwhelmed and his antis spread this harassment campaign into the public sphere, regaining streamers outside the company about him. This led to his long hiatus. A large portion of his fanbase kept infantilizing him, even though he told them to stop. and RP'd as his mom or manager. Every time he told them to stop, they just respond with things like, oh, Axia-kun is just in his rebellious phase. They were toxic and controlling too, telling him who he can and can't collab with. And in the end, instead of trying to help him moderate his chat or support his attempt to return, Nijisanji watched with their hands folded and accepted his graduation after he stated that it was too difficult to continue his activities because what I wanted to do and the direction of Nijisanji did not match. Why is it listed under here? Because again, this one seemed much more preventable compared to Lulu's case. Nijisanji had every opportunity, every power to help Axia moderate his own chat, set up preventive measures to prevent any harassment towards other livers who associated with him, or cut this issue in the bud early on. Yet, they didn't, and the talent, multiple talents, considering the previous controversies, suffered for months before finally choosing to graduate himself. I criticized Hololive for their handling of the Coco's Taiwan incident. Similar case where Chinese antis swamped her chat, which also had the bare minimum preventive measures and caused her and her associates to suffer from months-long abuse. I will also call out Nijisanji here. Nijisanji did handle 88 slander cases a month after the harassment campaign started, so I applaud them for becoming harsher on the harassment from antis. Moving on, we reach Niji antis harassment regarding Eloe. Eloe was a good friend of Chitose before joining Hololive. Chitose leaked some information about the toxic and poor management issues within Nijisanji to Eloe prior to Eloe's Hololive debut. During a stream using her PL account, Eloe brought this up in passing, but in a very vague way to steer clear of slandering any talents in Niji or the company itself. She mentioned the potential dangers of working for corporations, such as stalking and harassment, and only mentioned Chitose's name in passing, as Chitose had been stalked and harassed herself. This led to Niji antis to swamp her and her chat after she debuted with Hololive, going as far as to pretend they were Holo fans to harass her in her chat. Shortly after, they doxed her, tracing her relations with Chitose back to her PL, even going far as to send death threats and spam calls to her house and her stepfather's workplace. She left Hololive due to this abuse, stating she was unable to continue mentally or physically. Aloe also mentioned that the doxing and harassment went too far in her apology video, which has now been deleted. Shortly after some time, Aloe attempted to commit suicide and has thankfully recovered since. Her background is tragic. Her household situation was already in a rough place prior, with an abusive father. However, the escalation by the antis harassing her family members, especially her father, led the situation at home to worsen. She was forced to live off her earnings as a streamer to order food and remain in her room as much as possible to avoid contact with him. And yet, when she was finally given an opportunity to earn much through Hololive, the Niji antis denied her that opportunity and only worsened the abuse she received at home. It is clear through her own words that the harassment led to her reaching the breaking point and attempting suicide. Her own video mentioned the harassment and then the following attempt and her admittance into a mental ward. I can only wish her good health and the best of luck in her future endeavors. Then we have Melissa Kirenka's graduation. This one is a bit less eye-catching. The short version is Melissa Kirenka was pursuing a more musical aspect to her career. As such, she requested to own the rights to her own music, specifically 2 of her original songs that she made/produced. Nijisanji's management rejected her request, citing the fact that they legally owned her IP, her model, including all her music. This led to her deciding to not renew her contract and graduating from the company. This one isn't as bad in comparison to some of the others. However, it is still a head-scratcher that the company is willing to lose some of its most popular livers left and right over the difference in IP and rights to the music they paid/produced for. We now talk about the graduation queue. From the title, the context should be obvious. Over the course of the last year and a half, starting November 27, 2022, there have been 25 graduations and terminations within Nijisanji. Since the beginning of 2022, so 11 additional months, compared to Nijisanji, Hololive has graduated 5 talents, including Hall stars Rusia, Sana, Mel, Magni, and Vesper. Unfortunately, there may be more terminations/graduations yet to come for Nijisanji, as it seems the company purposefully spreads out terminations/graduations to promote an image of order. This is supposed by the fact that Pomu's graduation was known internally in July of 2023. Maria said she knew about it then, and then she implied she was late to the party on learning about it. Tomu didn't get to graduate until January of 2024. Also, Mr. mentioning it in his stream. I had decided to graduate before she, Nina, had. I had already had conversations with management around 5 months ago in regards to graduation. Believe it or not, graduation actually takes quite a long time. 5% of the talents from Hololive and Holostars graduated from Holo since January of 2022. 13.8% of the total livers from 2022 graduated from Nijisanji since November of 2022. Buckle your seatbelts, we're getting to the bullying, toxicity, clique, all the good stuff in Niji KR. Skip this part if you read the previous part about Niji KR above, cause it's the same thing. Wait, really? Fine, let's move on. The final yab. Niji EN and why overseas fans are up in arms. There's a whole separate re-entry about the various controversies from Niji EN. Here's a long list of it. Keep in mind that this does contain some bias as evidenced by the fact that it mentions every single controversial action, no matter how big or small, from Niji EN livers. However, it does document pretty much every single controversy from Niji EN till this day. Some that are not mentioned in this doc. But here are some of the major ones, with evidence, or at least some context. Vox Akuma's grooming allegations. Vox has had numerous accusations against him, specifically accusations of grooming and engaging in inappropriate behavior towards girls as young as 12. I will note that these accusations are mere accusations. They are not the truth, and should not be considered the truth, unless settled in a court of law. But these allegations had surfaced since the beginning of his tenure at Nijisanji. Basically, this is not something new that someone published in light of Nijisanji's recent scandals. This has been around for years. I will link the said accusations here. Next, we have Yugo's termination. Unnamed, formerly known as Yugo, was terminated without any explanation. They were never given a proper farewell, and the reasons for their termination is still unknown till this day. However, their termination was seemingly something he accepted. Regardless, this was seen as the beginning of terminations, graduations, and worrying over Niji EN. The AR live cancellation, a classic. This is fairly straightforward and adds on to the clusterfuck vibe at Nijisanji. Basically, there was an AR concert planned for Niji EN. 19 livers were involved, and it was set to be a 3D debut for many of them. After months of effort, with many livers flying to Japan to practice and record for the concert, it was cancelled at the last minute. Few mass protests and snide comments from the livers. It was officially cancelled, but many had hoped it would be an indefinite postponement rather than a full cancellation. It's clear that the AR concert is officially cancelled, since it has been over a year with no word about any rescheduling for this event. We're at the drama tuber controversy, guys. False ID/Kyo copyright struck. Even for newer or casual VTuber fans, this was a well-known event within the community. Basically, Nijisanji decided to copyright strike and shut down False ID and Kyo, two prominent members that covered VTuber news. Keep in mind, this was due to Zaion's termination and the controversy surrounding it. Basically, Nijisanji copyright strike them for trying to uncover information about the issue, to silence them. This almost led to False ID's entire channel being taken down due to the rapid succession of copyright strikes. Unsurprisingly, this may explain why he's been more than happy to cover Nijisanji's recent downfall, and for good reason as well. While going after Sabaki was commendable as he was a Japanese version of Keemstar and purposefully slandered talents for clicks, False and Kyo were much more impartial and presented news, especially for smaller VTubers as well. The fact that Nijisanji disagreed with their criticism of the company and attempted to silence them should not be ignored. They are willing to use every trick in the book to silence opposition and criticism. This should be to the surprise of no one. Right, now we have Hex Haywire's parasocial/donation yab. This video covers the entire topic very well. But TLDR, Hex roleplayed as a therapist, according to his lore. He is an underpaid student therapist. It goes about as well as you'd expect. A fan posted a picture of them cutting themselves and posted it publicly while asking for Hex to cure them. He did clarify that he wanted to establish a boundary, but then proceeded to tell his fans to trauma dump through his Streamlabs. Also, a bit of racism involving Sikhs and turbans. This is just the surface level details of his concerning actions. There is further info with sources in that video. Honestly, are you surprised at this point? Then we have Millie's 4chan stream controversy. The video speaks for itself. Basically, Millie planned a collab with a good chunk of Niji and created a 4chan-esque stream where the livers made some very controversial and questionable statements on that stream. Then we arrive at the Kyo Kaneko Korean racism allegations. This one is thankfully tame. Kyo mentioned Korea was a medical tourism destination since it was well known for plastic surgery and as such. A pretty stale stereotype joke, but he was still suspended for 2 weeks regarding this issue. This is pretty reasonable, which begs the question why Niji fight Zaion over a joke and Uki can get away with being racist constantly for the past several years. We now talk about Luca's former mod Scorched Earth controversy. This one has been circulating for some time now, especially after Selen's termination. Basically, Luca's former mod at Raziel Warmonic on Twitter blasted Luca on Twitter during the height of the firestorm that followed with Selen's termination. Through a Twitter thread, she leaked screenshots and information regarding Luca. I would like to add a disclaimer, much like Vox's, that this is the person that potentially groomed, harassed Luca, making these accusations. Though we will never know the background details for sure. Do take her words with a grain of salt, since she was a former mod. It is possible that she is making these claims to retaliate against Luca. Some of the questionable ones mentioned, Luca didn't actually write his own signed birthday merch and had Raziel write it for him. There are tweets that comment how his handwriting looked girly to some of his fans. He also wrote the Sakura Broom and birthday VP packs for him. He also carried out much of the work he took credit for, such as Minecraft projects, allegations of Luca's sexual harassment towards her and two other girls, the fact that Raziel was a married woman and supposedly left her husband for Luca after meeting each other in VR chat. The only thing noteworthy about the accuser is that Raziel knew Luca for years and was a mod for him. As mentioned, consider her accusations with caution. After that, we have former Livers alluding to a bigger problem within Niji. Matara, formerly known as Nina, mentioned how the company refused to let her defend her own fans. Also stated how surprised she was that vShoujo's management was cooperative and helpful, when Nijisanji's management was the opposite. Kuro, formerly known as Mr., was screwed over by Nijisanji's own incompetent management. He was recommended an accountant by Nijisanji, and that accountant turned out to be less than useless. Instead of helping him with taxes, the accountant put him in $300,000 in debt. It was vShoujo that eventually helped him move on past from it. He has also been vocal about Nijisanji's mistreatment, terrible management as Kuro. Tomu, and I will not divulge her current identity. Her current identity is Dear SUN. She just went to a maid cafe, the maids were chubby, and she felt it was difficult for her to eat because there was a smoking room nearby. Guys, Tomu is Dear SUN. People know about this already. Jesus Christ. Anyway, Tomu, as she wishes to remain anonymous, well, that's too late now, and has not returned to streaming, broke down in tears in one of her streams, still as Pomu, mentioning how management denied her a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, same as Selen, and how tough it was that management kept on rejecting her projects. By the way, they deleted this video after it started to spread on YouTube, really telling that management nuked one specific video where she cries about internal issues. Amigo, Mika, Niji Indonesia member, felt as though she was a mere stepping stone within the company, and felt like she was a burden. This also reinforces previous mentions from Kuro and Matara on how Nijisanji makes people feel like they are worthless without the company. When not a single former liver has anything good to say about the workplace, it's probably not a good sign. Here we go. Zaion was a prophet. Zayu, formerly known as Zaion, was eerily similar to Selen in terms of termination. Blasted for trumped-up charges, slandered by other livers within Niji, and silenced thereafter. Her termination letter was very similar to Selen's termination letter. In fact, some of the charges are outright identical, if not copied. Zaion's one-girl story reveals an abusive workplace with little to no management. Her manager was a 2-week-old hire, and he was also replaced soon after. She was constantly belittled and harassed to the point where she believed that she was nothing without the company and was forced to take antidepressants after her termination. While the joke she made was in bad taste, it was an implied sexual assault joke and definitely punishment worthy. The fact that the company created trumped up charges on top of it, such as adding a These Nuts joke copyright, for one of the reasons for her termination in the letter is a joke. Not to mention, this past week, Uki Violetta was called out for his blatant racism towards white people, not once, not twice, but enough for a 5-minute video compilation. Even as Zaion's termination letter, the company claimed that one of the rules she broke was offensive remarks regarding discrimination. Even Kyo was suspended for his Korean plastic surgery remarks. Yet what was management's response to Uki's actions? Nothing. That should already alert you on selective enforcement rules. Zaion warned the public about the core issues within Nijisanji, yet she was ignored by the majority of the community until Selen's termination. We're still not done, by the way. And now we revisit our past trauma as dragoons. Selen's termination, the match that lit the firestorm. Context and intro regarding Selen's situation. Dokibird, formerly known as Selen, has had her story spread far and wide. Most of it is well known. But the short summary is this. Selen tried to upload a music video, Last Cup of Coffee, in time for Christmas. It is presumed that management knew that the video was being worked on, as she had received the perms for the song from the song owner a year prior, in 2022. Written agreement can be found online. It's on Twitter. The song had been in development for at least several months from the artists that worked on the actual video, August of 2023 to be precise. It is highly likely that management had to give permission for the video to begin, otherwise she wouldn't have invested $15,000 on it. If management was unaware, that would have been a problem in itself. Just to mention one thing, in August, Selen got in touch with 13 artists, including myself, to create the music video for Last Cup of Coffee. I posted about it in my updates. At that time, an email was sent to the management department to sign an NDA, but it wasn't until the end of January this year that I received the official contract. And up till now, I haven't received any follow-up emails inquiring about the payment details. Although the communication with Selen wasn't very smooth, in the end, she did pay me for the work. With this kind of efficiency, you still criticize a liver for owing creator wages. In most cases, commercial commissions only start after the contract is signed and everyone had finished their artwork. The project was completed. Selen had left, and there were still some artists who hadn't even seen a contract. Tell me, whose fault is that? Selen and the artists legally have to file these perms, since there were art of former and current livers along with song perms themselves. Artists confirmed that they shared the sketches and nothing was some bait and switch. Months had passed and it's now a week until the project goes out, yet management still hasn't sent the final approval. Instead, she's ghosted for 37 hours when she had most likely warned her upload date ahead of time. If management wasn't aware again, this is an even bigger issue. It means the management isn't doing their job. Instead of giving her the okay to upload, when management finally replies, they sent a short message saying they don't have perms for IPs that belong to their own company, and leaves her on read again. Did I say ignoring messages for 37 hours about a project that has been in development for over a year on the internal calendar for which they have received and had to file perms for over a year that is scheduled to come out in less than a week? Sure, her uploading the video was a big no and a breach of rules. But considering what else we know, why are we surprised at Selen's reaction? This brings us to the nitty-gritty details of how management constantly sabotaged Selen, to the point where she made a net $0 in profit since she spent $200,000 in expenses in the year 2023. In their own termination letter, Niji claims Selen was at fault for lack of communication with artists, resulting in delays in Selen Tatsuki's commission payments to artists. Their own words. How did the artists respond? Look at the previous page and the image on it. The person mentioned was literally an artist working on the MV with Selen. Niji doesn't pay the artist and then blames Selen for it. Artists speak up about how Nijisanji not only forgot to pay them, forcing Selen to spend out of pocket, which accrued to $200,000 in expenses, none of which was reimbursed, but also screwed up their NDAs, which allowed them to tell us, the public, the details in the first place. This was not the first slide, by the way. Management regularly cancelled her projects, passed her up for sponsorships and collabs, and rejected proposals. They also unilaterally moved her schedule up weeks to swamp her with work, screwed over her Fall Guys tournament, wrong spelling there, and walled her out of the Sanrio collab, which was one of her lifelong dreams. What we have here is a repeated behavior of a management that is always rushing her and closing down any of her projects, even after she had made significant investments for unexplained reasons. This had been occurring for years, and considering Selen's suicide attempt shortly after asking her fans to re-upload the video, it can be pretty easy to see the conclusion of this mess. The music video was going to be her suicide note, or at least the act of asking the fans to re-upload it. The MV was made with good intentions at first, but after being denied by management, she asked her fans to re-upload it, most likely in her memory, before she attempted to take her life. After all, management had a pattern of turning down her projects at the last minute, so why should she expect anything different? Skinwalking and PR first. What gets even more concerning is what follows after from Zaion termination letter. In an effort to calm the situation, Nijisanji sought to either publicly disclose the reasons for making the music video private or have Zaion disclose them herself, while being mindful of Zaion physical and mental health. Nijisanji management did their best to communicate with not only Zaion herself, but also her emergency contact. However, despite frequent communication with Zaion emergency contact, while remaining considerate of her situation, we were unable to come to an agreement on how to proceed. The decision was made to temporarily remove access to accounts on various social media platforms and video distribution services under the name Zaion. If we consider this statement within the letter and recognize that Zaion most likely attempted shortly after December 25th, this means that Nijisanji locked Zaion out of her accounts in retaliation for releasing the video, shortly after her December 25th tweet. Yet, on December 27th, she made a tweet. Unless we're assuming that management could not respond to an emergency within 24 hours, possible considering what we know above, but this does make them look even worse. We can assume that management took over her social media and tweeted that Zaion was fine, when she was actually hospitalized for an attempted suicide. This is several different levels of fucked. I can't even begin to explain how messed up this is. On top of this, their own termination letter mentioned how Zaion refused to agree with management's requests during her recovery. So despite knowing that one of their livers was in a hospital for attempted suicide, they decided to pretend they were her, posted everything is fine, and then continued to nag her about accepting their PR. This is also supported by the fact that they specifically mentioned they were unable to reach her while she was hospitalized. They did this all while she was recovering. The second attempt on her life should not be surprising at that point. Instead of trying to support or care for one of the biggest livers who had done much to support the company, $200,000 out of her own pocket to use for projects to promote the branch and her channel, they instead focused on the PR aspect and skinwalked her to throw off her fans. Zaion's termination and response. And what eventually led to was the termination itself. 30 minutes before the termination was posted, Nijisanji privated all her VODs and Twitter. They went full scorched earth, blowing up everything related to her before announcing her termination. Zaion mentioned that they didn't notify her about this, and she found out about her own termination through her Twitter. Zaion requested to leave on more neutral terms, a simpler termination or graduation on January 26. After receiving a non-response, she proceeded to send an official complaint, hence her bringing in her lawyer, as proof of breach of conduct/contract to terminate herself from Nijisanji on February 5th. She was immediately terminated within hours. Knowing about the graduation queue and how it takes months to get processed, what likely occurred was her official request for resignation being sent on January 26, aka requesting a silent termination like Yugo's. Management refused to terminate due to penalties or contract conditions, and instead ignored the request until she filed an official complaint through a lawyer. And after that, we can't be certain of what happened. Possible miscommunication or mistranslation. We will never know for sure. Yet what we do know was that Nijisanji's management reacted by going nuclear, releasing their infamous 3-page character assassination termination letter with many similarities to Zaion's own termination letter. Meanwhile, management forgot to remove perms for Zaion's mods, and they promptly revolted by promoting Dokibird, an absolute mess all around, one that could have been easily solved by management. This entire controversy eventually was leaked to the mainstream because of just how badly Nijisanji fumbled the ball on this. Yes, she disregarded what management told her and uploaded the video. But to burn their public reputation in response to that, it's mind-bogglingly stupid. Jump to the analysis from experts section and watch the video from PR Professor. Nijisanji fired a nuke onto its own foot to squash an ant. No matter how much blame is on Zaion herself, Niji's reaction was very much over the top, very on par with what they did previously with other talents like Zaion, and unfortunately would have worked like Zaion's case if Zaion didn't have the proof and support from those who knew her. Some additional reactions to the termination letter include Andrew Dice, a veteran editor in the games industry, who released a series of tweets heavily criticizing Nijisanji's public relations post, citing them as partial and makes mistakes I would expect undergraduate PR students to be able to catch and correct. This is not to mention the mass exodus of sponsors, artists, developers, etc. that cut their connection with Niji, Hype being one of the most prominent ones, which brings us to another questionable move by Nijisanji. The impact of this decision on our financial results will be negligible. Refer back to the above where I discussed how Nijisanji seemingly only cares about shareholders and inflating their company valuation. After releasing that termination letter, this was what they shared to their investors. Negligible. One of their biggest livers, the biggest EN female streamer, was considered negligible. Based on just finances, sure. But considering the firestorm that was burning through the EN sphere, why would the company even release this? If it was negligible, why post it to the investors? The first such statement following the termination of a liver. If Zaion was negligible, then what does that make the other livers that were smaller than her? Chopped liver? If she was negligible, why did the company spend time and effort to terminate her in a spectacular fashion and then run to the investors to calm them down? Again, your answer is as good as mine. We will never know for sure. Now we reach the better part of the story, Doki's rebirth. Thankfully, Doki's attempt at her life failed, and she is still with us today, which brings us to her return stream. Some key points. During the stream, Doki talks about how her suicide attempt was a result of months of build-up and stress that led to a breaking point. That she has medical records and lawyer-approved statements about her experience. She also revealed how she tried to leave Nijisanji on more neutral terms on January 26, but was denied that privilege. She only found out about her own termination from the Twitter announcement. Doki never wanted the public to know about the bullying drama, and she can't legally say anything more in the public about it. Documentation such as therapy sessions and doctor evaluations were kept, and she alluded that everyone knew why she was in the hospital, and the reason behind it, possibly hinting that this information was sent forward to Nijisanji, but they chose to disregard it or do anything with it. Doki doesn't want anyone to be harassed or bullied because she went through that herself. She just wants people to look towards the new beginnings for the Lunar New Year, and to make people laugh. She's still the same person, and that won't be taken away from her. This was also where she mentioned that she made a net $0 in profit in the year 2023 due to her various projects and such. Knowing what conspired with Nijisanji above, management failing to pay artists and give them proper NDAs, we can assume that not all of the $200,000 was meant to be spent in the way that it was. Any color but always black. The infamous Elira Black video. This video played during Dokibird's Neopet stream, which led us to this moment. Before we dig into the black video, I just want to point out something I found peculiar. Nijisanji released this stream right as Doki was starting her first gaming stream as Doki. It was a Neopet stream. Doki's stream was planned ahead of time, so it was likely they were aware of what she planned at this time. Yet they released this stream while she was trying to step away from this entire dumpster fire, and the content of it was severe enough that it caused Doki to have a panic attack on stream. Thankfully, she composed herself and gave previously planned neutral statements while she recovered. She had planned for it, as if she knew Nijisanji would go full scorched earth, but it was still an extremely scummy thing to do, and displays a very severe pattern of the company seemingly abusing their livers emotionally. Now on to the actual black video content. In the video statement, Elira claims that they would say what they wanted to say in their own words, and these were their feelings, and that Elira volunteered her channel to be used for this announcement. Everything that was discussed had been approved by their lawyers and were based on their personal experiences. Nijisanji staff claims that over the past month, they had received documents from Zaion's lawyer containing examples of her claimed experiences while she was working under Anycolor. The documents included personal information of her co-workers. They note that some of the information contained within, if publicized, run the risk of their personal safety due to doxing. Notably, one section of this document alludes to where Millie, Anna, and Elira live. Elira also states that the documents contained information with harmful claims which they believe to be untrue. Vox talks about his past experiences with working with Zaion and talked about her repeated behavior with not complying with protocol. Vox also alluded to Zaion thinking that management played favorites, with Vox being one, and that she secretly recorded their private conversation talking about it, which she used as evidence for her documentation. Vox talked about his experience about how this isn't the case, and that they were equally reprimanded by staff in similar situations. Ike merely reiterates that the documents shown to them had claims that they thought were untrue and potentially harmful. All three of them claimed to have been hurt or betrayed by the situation. The A Message from Nijisanji EN video is now officially the most disliked Nijisanji video of all time, at 16,000 thumbs down, and the first Elira Pandora video where dislikes exceeds likes. 2 hours in posting this video, Elira loses over 7,000 subscribers. Fans continue to disapprove of Nijisanji's statements and actions through various social media outlets. Multiple fans have likened the video's contents to Darvo, a reaction that perpetrators of wrongdoing may display in response to being held accountable for their behavior. Darvo, manipulating the argument. Darvo, an acronym for Deny, Attack, and Reverse Victim and Offender, is a reaction that perpetrators of wrongdoing, such as sexual offenders, may display in response to being held accountable for their behavior. Some researchers indicate that it is a common manipulation strategy of psychological abusers. I would like to point out that Vox, in a previous stream, stated that people could just leave the company if they disagreed with the company's actions. So considering that he took part in this video and slandered her character, there are 3 possibilities. Vox threw his friend under the bus to maintain his current lifestyle and contract with Nijisanji. It's actually not easy to leave Nijisanji despite his claims, hence they pointed a gun to his head and had him read out the prepared content. Nijisanji showed doctored evidence to enrage Vox, basically lying to him. None of this is favorable to the company or the livers at all. There is also the possibility of Doki's lying. However, considering her following statements, I am more inclined to believe her words over a company that has a reputation and track record for doing these kinds of things. Nijisanji basically admitted to sharing her private documents, including journal entries of her recollection of being bullied, to the other livers. If the company's own claims that there were bullies among the livers were correct, claims that Nijisanji themselves made, then they leaked her private documents, some of her more vulnerable moments, with her potential bullies. It's also very much possible that they leaked her medical documents among the livers as well, since Vox in Elira's Black video admitted he went through all the documents very thoroughly. Oh, and they violated a Canadian law as well. This is Doki's response to the Black video. Her response was tame compared to the company's attempt to ruin her character. Through her tweets and a Neopad stream before it was abruptly ended due to the escalation, Doki says that the documents were only meant to be for her, the Nijisanji staff, and the lawyers involved. Those documents should have never been shared to Nijisanji live streamers, and that what Nijisanji did was illegal. She also says that she has more statements and receipts to release later on. I will say that it never was supposed to be shown to anyone other than me, my lawyer, and other relevant lawyers. It was a private document with my personal information and was used as a legal document to help my lawyer and document my thoughts. It was never supposed to be released anywhere else to any other parties outside of the legal department. It makes me wonder if my medical and hospital records were also released without my consent, and that was also promised to me to be kept private. I'm currently talking to my lawyer, and thankfully only my diagnosis and reason for hospital stay was reported without further private info being disclosed. It was requested that none of this info should be revealed to anyone other than legal. Thank you everyone for the support. I really wish things didn't have to go this way. I didn't say anything more, and I was ready to move on and start a new life. Unfortunately, this is only the end for now. It is very much possible the company may escalate and cause even greater issues. Search up Uki's racist tweet, Wilson's controversial tweet, and the art stealing scandal, and 39 Dav's claims of seeing some of the documents against Dokibird and slandering her on Twitch. There is more to this drama, but much of it has been extensively covered by False ID, Kyo, Rima Evenstar, Lydia Nekuzawa, along with many other YouTubers who have made videos on these issues on their channels, and I am exhausted writing all this. This was a rough ride. This is an afterword from the author. If there had been effective management or any sort of quality control from the parent company in Japan, all these controversies for every overseas branch, especially EN, probably wouldn't have happened. Yet the company seems very short-sighted, focusing on immediate profits while sacrificing long-term stability and growth. Q3 might be fine in terms of earnings due to Niji Fest, one of their biggest yearly events. But with their overseas market getting killed one by one, what does Niji have left? Shareholders do not want to hear the phrase "we're stagnating" from the company that they own shares of. Yet, due to all the short-sightedness for profit, this is exactly what is about to happen. If EN was really going to be their pillar, maybe they should have invested a bit more into it. Turns out, investments into the companies and talent's futures along with the money for stable management and projects are better than a stock buyback. Who knew? Here's the TLDR. Nijisanji is facing serious financial and reputational troubles. Bad investment. Nijisanji spent $18 million on a stock buyback to boost prices, but it backfired. Their stock price is now even lower, resulting in financial loss, not to mention a distinct lack of investment in their own talents and management. The company has focused too much on profit margins and stocks rather than trying to grow stably. While it may remain in the green due to their profitable JP branch, it is unclear if the company can expand any further, not to mention a critical lack of funding for its management, a weakening position. The controversy has damaged their reputation with investors. This is compounded by Japan's struggling economy and an oversaturated VTuber market. EN was declared as Nijisanji's pillar for future growth, yet all evidence points to a decline in EN viewership and revenue. History of failed expansion. Nijisanji has a track record of poorly managed overseas branches, Indonesia, India, Korea, hurting their growth potential. Declining popularity. Recent events for key talents like Anna show decreased viewership and earnings, especially in Western markets. Viewership and donations are falling off with each new EN gen. Conclusion. Nijisanji's path ahead presents significant uncertainties. Rebuilding investor confidence and demonstrating successful global expansion is critical, but recent actions and declining popularity pose formidable challenges. In short, all these controversies, including the recent Uki Twitter scandal, all lead back to Nijisanji's model of operations. The company is trying for short-term profit and axing much of the actual crucial infrastructure needed to expand and maintain their fan base. This is why it seems like Niji EN is out of control with no management, because from all we know, their own financial data and all the leaks from past livers, there might actually be a lack of one. Thank you for reading. I hope this was helpful. Feel free to source it and spread this far and wide. You have my full permission to quote it, use it, and whatever. The people deserve to know what kind of company Nijisanji is. A black one that has not learned for the past 5 years and has committed the same mistakes over and over and over and over again. And that is the end of the video. This is Rex Nebula, signing out.